Welcome to the webinar, How to Calculate Your Win Number. So we're really excited here. We're going to do some best practices for calculating your win number. Julie's going to jump in and show us how we do this in VAN. So it's a really exciting webinar for us. I'm a data nerd, so I love this kind of stuff, but and it's really important. And it's a good time now because we're talking about getting started with campaigns, getting up and running, trying to understand our chances of winning, or in some cases that we might not be able to win in our district, which is also good to know. So a couple of things for housekeeping. Okay, so I'll do this agenda really quick. We'll go through introductions. We will talk about, hey, what is a win number, right? And why should you calculate one? We'll talk about all the different steps included in calculating win number. We'll talk about targeting. How do you target in your district? We'll talk about going down into the metrics of a district and looking at the discrete precincts and benchmarking some of those precincts. And we'll show you some tools to do that, to pull voter data. And then at the end of this, we'll talk about making a go or no-go decision, because that's probably where a lot of you are right now, especially on the campaign side. So that's some of what we'll cover today. I'm Craig Grella, and I'm here with Julia. You want to say hello, Julia?
Hello, Julia. Hey, everyone. It's great to be here with you. Thanks for joining us for this rescheduled webinar today. I'm the director of the Solutions Architecture team for NGP VAN, which means I join folks in revenue to make sure that the tools that you all are considering using are the right fit. I've been with NGP VAN for 14 years now. I really love helping campaigns and organizations make smart decisions about their work and use data to do that. So super excited. And Craig, let's get going.
Thank you. Perfect. Okay, great. So some of the housekeeping. Yes, we are recording this. So when we are done, what we typically do is we put captions onto this. And I know some people have already done the Zoom captioning, so thank you. What we do is we add captions to the video when we're done, and we make sure that we answer any questions. So if we miss some questions today, we will put that together for you, and we send that in an email. So you'll get a copy of the presentation, and you'll get a link to the video once we publish it, usually on YouTube or our website somewhere. So you'll get a copy of that, whether you're on this or if you missed it. Also, I want to mention that the chat is for engaging with hosts and other participants. So if there's any technical questions like, hey, I can't hear you, or the audio's not working, or something's wrong, feel free to pop that into the chat, right? The Q&A, you should see a Q&A section. That's for asking questions about the content. Like if I'm presenting something and you have a question about that, or if Julie is presenting something, which she'll do later on related to VAN, drop it in the Q&A. If you have a question about best practices, drop it in the Q&A. That lets us track those questions. And like I said, if we miss something during the webinar, Julie and I can go through those Q&A remaining questions and make sure that we answer them in the email that comes out to you all. We love to have engaging webinars, so we want to make sure that people are chatting and getting as much as they possibly can out of this. So that's really good. So we want to make sure that that we do that as we go along. So cool. So let's get started. I want to just pop up a poll real fast as we get into talking about what a win number is and whether you should calculate one. So I'm going to launch a poll. This is interactive part of our webinar number one here. There's a few. And hopefully they're not too burdensome here, but I want to launch this one. So how many first-time candidates or campaigns so far on this webinar? Just curious, oftentimes when candidates run, they don't take the time to do research into their district, or they rely on information from previous candidates, maybe even previous candidates who've lost, which is not necessarily a bad idea. It might not have anything to do with whether they looked at win numbers or not, but just curious to understand of the candidates that are on, maybe which ones, are new. And it looks like we've got quite a bunch. I'll leave this open just for another couple seconds as everyone has a moment to go through it. Cool. Great. All right, let's end that poll, and I'm going to put up the numbers so everyone can see. Looks like we've got about 22% are new candidates, so that's great. Hopefully you're able to get some good information from this and understand how to look at your district and why that's important. Cool. Okay, so let's move forward. So what is a win number? When we say win number, what does that mean? A win number is the number of votes which guarantees that you win your race, right? So it guarantees, it's the number at which you cannot lose. If you achieve X number of votes, you will win your race. That's what we say when we say a win number, right? So there is a number of votes. Every district has a certain number of voters and some estimated turnout for any given election. And your number of votes, the win number, is the number that guarantees you win your race. Meaning if you achieve that, you cannot lose, right? That's what we're talking about. That's what we want to achieve. We want to try to understand what that number is. And we want to create our campaign and the structure of our campaign so that we are doing the activities that help us reach that win number, right? Cool. So what are some reasons we might want to calculate our win number? Well, one, it helps you understand your district, right? Calculating win number, you're going to use some electoral history. You're going to look into the votes that have happened in the past in your specific district. So it's going to help you understand the history of that district. And by calculating a win number, you're going to understand who voted in the district in the past. What did they look like? You're going to look at things like partisanship. How many Democrats do we have in this particular district? And of the Democrats, which ones are voting? Which ones aren't voting? How many Republicans or how many other types of voter registrations are there? Do you have independents in your district? I didn't know this until a couple of years ago, but there's actually 200 registered more than 200 registered political parties in the United States, of which one of them is actually the Pirate Party. Did anybody know that? Does anybody know what the Pirate Party is? I wasn't familiar with that. I picture like Jimmy Buffett and like a pirate on his shoulder at a voting location. I'm not exactly sure if that's what they stand for or not, but exactly are. But yeah, so understanding who the parties are and who the participants are in your district is really important. Obviously, looking at things like expected turnout in your specific election. This is really important because turnout changes from year to year, even from primaries to generals, or specials can have a totally different turnout in an election. An off-year election like say a 2023 could have a very distinct difference in terms of turnout from party to party, from district to district. So understanding what year you're in and understanding what that turnout might be and how it could be different from previous years is really important to predicting what's going to happen in the current year and how that affects your win number. Looking at your win number is going to give you a sense and help you determine the likelihood of winning, right? You can win as a Democrat in a deep red state. It's happened before, it'll happen again, right? But you need to understand what that is. Is it a 55-45 or is it a 75-25, right? It doesn't mean if it is a 75-25 not in your favor, that doesn't mean you can't win. It just means you have to do a lot more persuasion. And it probably means you're going to spend a lot more money. So understanding the obstacles that you need to overcome is not only going to help you understand things like the electoral history of your district, but it's going to help shape your budget as you move forward. There's a big difference in terms of budget trying to persuade 20% of your voters as opposed to trying to persuade 2% of the voters in your district, or even having an advantage of maybe 5 or 10% to the Democratic side. It's a big difference in terms of how much money you're going to have to raise to do all your campaign activities. And I like to think that your win number really helps to drive everything else that you do in your campaign plan. Like I said, it's going to help you in many ways determine how much you need to fundraise. And that's going to determine a lot of things in your campaign, how much staff you might be able to access and other resources that you might be able to have access to during your race. So a win number is really, again, the first thing that we need to jump into and try to understand, even before we declare sometimes, just trying to decide whether we have a winnable race.
Greg, I think a great question has come up in the Q&A that I wanted to see if you wanted to just talk about now or we can talk about later. But someone is wondering about the introduction of ranked choice voting and what that means for what you're talking about and just overall. So whenever
thank you. I see that from Olivia. So we are going to talk a little bit about the different types of elections, and ranked choice voting is really tough. There's actually a lot of academic research on how ranked choice voting affects different structures, right? Whether it happens in primaries or happens later on. And there are more states that are, or I should say, there are groups within states that are really pushing for ranked choice voting. And there's research behind why that might be a better structure than, say, having a closed primary where the argument is fewer people can participate. I like to think of this kind of as being a purist, right? And looking at total vote numbers. The fact of the matter is it's very hard. It's very hard to calculate a win number in states that do ranked choice voting. It's very hard to calculate a win number in states that have runoffs where it's not just a majority winner, right? Like a 50% plus one, that kind of thing. It's very hard to calculate win numbers in multiple candidate primaries. You can still calculate the win number, but that win number sometimes can be hard to achieve when you've got 6 people in a primary. So we'll talk a little bit about that as we move on. And Olivia, if I don't exactly answer your question, we could connect afterward and I'll point you to some of the research and the academic research that's been done that helps candidates and campaigns do that. I also believe the Democratic Party, the DNC, has actually put out some guidance about, calculating win numbers or vote get goals in multi-candidate primaries. So toward the end, I'll point you to some of that, or afterward, I'll include it in the email. I don't have the link handy right now, but I know that even the DNC has done some work on that, and it's actually some really good reading. Cool. All right, so let's talk about some of the steps that we can take to calculate our win number. It looks like we have another question. Oh, Julia's perfect. Okay. Yeah, you can share this with anyone. These will be public. Again, we're recording this. So Paula asked, we will make a recording available. We'll send you a link and you could share that with anyone you want to share. So different steps to calculating your win number. So first thing you want to do is understand the type of election you're dealing with. And that was kind of the question that Olivia just asked a moment ago, right? And understanding whether you're dealing with a primary, and then even then, are you the only person on the ballot? If so, you probably might not need to calculate your win number for the primary. You're still going to have to do it for the general because likelihood is you'll have some competition. Is it a runoff, right? And then understanding what that runoff looks like and how the state in your area or even the county is going to hold that runoff and the type of how that runoff is scheduled to be won, right? Is it just simple majority? Do you have to hit a certain number or percentage of votes, things like that? The second step in understanding or calculating your win number is determining the current voter registration, right? This tells us how many people are available that can vote, right? So we can't determine a win number unless we know how many people can vote in general. And then we want to determine the historical election turnout so that we understand how many people did vote in the past, the recent past. That helps us understand what the turnout percentages might be in the future. So we look at the current registration to understand who can vote right now in my election. We look at the historical to say who voted in the recent past, because that gives us an indication of how many people might turn out today or tomorrow. So once we estimate how many people will vote, we apply that to our current voter registration to give us a sense of how many people are going to turn out. And then from there, we use a simple formula to determine our win number, or at least to estimate our win number. And then really it's about doing the work to make sure that we identify enough voters on a regular basis to get to that win number. And if through the course of our campaign, we are not identifying enough voters, that might give you an indication that you need to step up or ramp up organizing on persuasion, or that you might not hit your numbers in general and you might need to do other things, more advertising, more print, more mail, more digital, more things like that. Cool. So we'll talk a little bit more about types of elections. Of course, again, we mentioned primaries, right? We have a little map up on the screen here. It's color-coded. You'll see there's a source. I got this from the the state legislatures, the NCSL, which publishes this list. I think this one is from 2021, but currently there are 15 states which hold open primaries. There are 9 or 10 states which hold closed or partisan primaries. For example, I'm in Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania is a closed primary. It's a partisan primary state where to vote in the primary, you have to be registered for a particular political party, right? So Democrats vote for Democrats, Republicans vote for Republicans. And if you're not registered with one of the major parties, you cannot participate in the primary in the state of Pennsylvania or Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So for some people, that's problematic. There are 21 states that have a mix of open or closed primaries. They have different rules and regulations as to who can vote, which parties can show up on the ballot. And unfortunately, that's a lot of states, and it can sometimes be confusing. And then there are several states which do either two, like the top 2 move forward, or the top 4 move forward. And there's different calculations on how those are done. And there are a few different states and a few different counties that work in that regard. So when you look at your election, again, whether you're working on the primary or the general election, you want to make sure that you go to your Secretary of State's office and confirm that through your county if your county's running your election, and understand the rules of your election. And you may be in a state that has different types of elections, meaning your primary may be a top 2 and your general may not. So you need to understand the rules of the game, so to say, before you get started, because finding this out later and finding out that maybe you've been targeting the wrong way, that could be a tough hurdle to overcome. And somebody mentioned caucuses. That's a good point. I don't specifically call out caucuses here. I think it's mixed in with some of the different things you see here under the primary. But it's a really good point in that there are other methods, right? Caucuses and then runoffs, which Olivia mentioned before, which run a totally different way and have a totally different dynamic. I remember back in the 2016 election, a lot of the candidates on the Republican and the Democratic side, it was like Bernie and Hillary and Trump and some of the other crews there on the Republican side, were producing videos teaching their volunteers how to understand caucuses. And it was actually really interesting to see some of that material, which I think is still out there on YouTube, but, understanding that those things are different. And, in some cases, the caucus, if a lot of people turn out to the caucus, it could take a really long time to finish that caucus. And oftentimes people just go home. They don't want to participate anymore. They've got kids and, they take off. And it's really unfortunate that happens through that process. So one of the steps we talked about was looking at the current voter registration, understanding what the registration is in your district right now, right? Because this is going to control how many people can possibly vote in your election. And that number may be different than the number of people who voted in the last election, which could have just taken place a couple weeks ago. There's also changing districts still going on from the last census, right? There's court cases, I want to say in something like 25 states. There are cases all the way up through the Supreme Court which get decided almost every day related to redrawing districts, congressional districts, local districts, precincts, things like that. It's also very normal for precincts to be redrawn by, not necessarily by parties, but by the state legislatures. But then that stuff also goes to the state courts, and that stuff gets changed every day. So it's really important that you understand what your current voter registration is. The best way to do that is to go to the voter file. I put it in really big text here. The voter file is our key. It is our, I don't want to be too religious here, but the voter file is our Bible, right? In the or whichever religion you prescribe to or subscribe to. That's where we want to go back, right? We always want to look at the current voter file. Later on, Julia is going to talk to us about VAN. Which provides some really great shortcuts for a lot of the work I'm going to explain to you and how to do it manually. But your Secretary of State has this at the state level, and your county has this, which is probably going to be controlling your local elections. So you have to get a copy of your voter file. The sooner you do that, the better. There is no, it's too late, like get it today if you haven't gotten it already. So the current voter file is going to tell us, again, how many people can vote. You're also going to look at the current registration. And in particular, you want to take a look at the partisan composition among that registration. So here's a quick example. And I made these tables up, and we'll use these tables as we flow through and as an example of some of the math that we're talking about here. But you'll see here, this is a fictional district. But let's take a look, right? 11,200 registered voters on the Democratic side, 9,600 registered Republicans. There are 4,400 independents and 1,200 people that make up all the other registrations, including the Pirate Party, right? So a total of 26,400 people are registered in this fictional district where Julia is running for, let's say, county executive, right? Julia, good luck on your race. I think you'll be fantastic. All right. So you could see here, it's pretty close. Like this could potentially be a tight race. The Democrats have a slight advantage, right? But there's a lot of independents, and we all know the independents can have a leaning, right? And that leaning may not necessarily be 50%, half go Democrat, half go Republican, and we're still safe. We also have other registrations, right? And we don't know who they are. We don't know where they fall. They could be all Republican, or 70% of the independents could be Republican, in which case we might have a problem, right? Because if we look at 70% of the independents as Republican, we're starting to get Republicans have an advantage there, and we could be in trouble. So this is why we really need to dig into the data and really understand what it looks like. But we're going to use this example as we go through this here. So we're going to get into a little bit of math. If you're uncomfortable with math, don't worry. You don't have to break out a calculator. You don't have to worry about this. Don't worry about taking notes. You're going to get a recording of this, and you can come back to it later. So once you understand the current registration, you also want to put that aside for a minute because we're going to come back to it. What we need to do now is we need to look at historical election turnout, right? We need to know in your district, what has that looked like? So first of all, your county is going to house this data. I put up a picture of Allegheny County. That's where I live, Pittsburgh. There's, about 1 million voters. And Allegheny County has it listed on their website, right? If you click any of these links, hey, how did the 2023 general come out? Okay, now we're in 2024. So Julia is running for county executive in Allegheny County. They had the county executive race just this year, but let's pretend we're just having this race now. They last had it going back in 2019, right? So I might want to scroll down a little bit and look for 2019 data, because that's going to be representative of the race that she's running. So you'll want to make sure that you find that right data. That's going to tell us how many people voted in the previous election, which is going to be similar to how many people will likely vote in our election. Again, I'm going to look at the district and precinct partisanship, and here's what some of that looks like. So I looked at a few previous elections. I looked at 2019, and maybe I even went back even further and looked at another countywide election in this state. Maybe it was like a sheriff's election, a county sheriff, right? And then maybe I went back to 2015 and looked at the, almost 10 years ago election. But I'm looking at prior elections that are representative of Julia's election, right? Like if Julia's running for county executive, I don't want to look at a state rep race that maybe had 1/3 the number of voters. I could look at it and consider maybe the same precincts within that district, but I don't want to say that a state rep race is going to be exactly representative of a county executive. They may be on two different scales. So really, I'm trying to compare apples to apples here and make sure that I am comparing similar districts, similar level of office, and similar years. There's a reason I could argue why I might not go back past 2018. I know that 2018 was a sea change of Democratic voters in Allegheny County. That year in particular, it got much more progressive issues on the ballot, issues like abortion, same-sex marriage, voting rights, civil rights, whereas maybe those weren't as prevalent in years before 2018. So I might give a lower weight to races before 2018 and a heavier weight to races after 2018. So that 2019 race, might be looking really good. So I've got those up on the top table here, election 1 and election 2, and you could see how Democrats and Republicans did in those two different elections. Pretty close, but slightly different. More independents turned out, more people of the other registration turned out, and it's a close turnout, but slightly different. And then down below, I list the candidates in that race, right? Like Mary Democrat. So I'm looking at election 2, which let's just say I thought election 2 was more representative of the actual race. It was a county executive race. I think it was closer. There was the head primary. The head person on the Democratic side was a woman. Julia's a woman, similar. The head Republican running against the person in 2019 was a male candidate. That's the same this year. So I'm looking at different demographics and trying to line things like that up. I look at the actual votes that turned out, and let's say 9,400 votes represents 85%, right? So on the right side, on the top box where you see election 2, those were the registered voters. There were 11,000 Democrats, there were 10,000 Republicans. And the actual turnout in that race for Mary Democrat was 9,400, which is an 85% turnout for the Democrats. The Republicans turned out at 82%. And then I lumped in all of the independents. There was a woman named Lori running as an independent, and the independents turned out at 23%. Now, what we find averaging that across the board was that there were 18,600 actual votes from 26,000 potential voters, which represents a 72% turnout. Now, I'm giving you this information because it's really important that you dig into the numbers. It's important that you don't just use averages across the board, because what you can see up top is that Democrats turn out at a much higher rate than the average, as do Republicans. So when you start doing your math later on, it can be tough to just use that overall percentage because you might be overestimating or underestimating your turnout. Hopefully that makes sense. Go ahead.
It does. Yeah, Craig, there's a couple of questions that I think
Yep.
I want to call out. The first is, and Craig did not say this about himself, but it's worth calling out. Craig is a local elections expert and helps consult on many local races. So Craig, as a subject matter expert, how far back do you think is worth looking at going when you're comparing historical turnout?
This is just my opinion, and thank you for the intro, Julie, which I forgot to do earlier. I'm actually a local elected official. I'm serving in my 7th year of a commission in a town of about 35,000 people. When I did my race, I went back 10 years, and I looked at all relevant elections. So I pulled up governor's elections, even though I wasn't running for governor, but I only looked at the districts, the precincts within the district that existed there. So like, I'm at the local level, and then above me would be a state rep, and then above them would be a state senator, and then, county and governor, that kind of stuff. I looked at all of those, but I only looked at my precincts within those. And I kind of set a top bar, right? Like I knew that the governor's race is probably going to turn out more people than my local race. So I said, looking at my districts in the governor's race, I'm probably never going to turn out that many people. So that would be like a high bar. And then I looked at, say, like a school board race and said, well, I'm probably going to turn out more than the school board, which is really local. So maybe that's my low bar, and I'm going to fall somewhere in between. And then I went back and I looked at 10 years worth of commissions in my exact district. Now, somebody else is asking, well, what do you do if the districts have changed or if the district didn't exist? Now, your district, as it is called today, may not have existed, but the precincts within your district probably existed. So if your district has changed last week, last year, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, you have to find what that comparable district is. Unless you're like, you're in Hawaii and a new island was created and your district literally didn't exist. It just came up from the water. There's a good chance that your district existed. It was just called something else, and you need to find that. Again, Julie is going to show us how VAN helps us do that.
Yeah, that's great. And then the only other open question, Craig, which you've sort of talked about, but just quickly, do you mind running through again the idea of different types of elections and the different turnout that you'll see, right? So if you're talking about a presidential general election, it's going to be different than just a regular general election.
Yeah, great point. So every 4 years, we have a presidential election, right? So the presidential elections suck up all the air in politics. There's a lot of money that get dumped into the presidential elections across the board, from candidates, campaigns, PACs, states. I mean, just everybody throws money into it. So you'll hear about it more often. So it typically ends up turning out more people. Generally speaking, there's always an exception to the rule, but generally speaking, turnout in presidential years will be the highest of the 4-year election cycle. In some areas, you know, I've seen precincts which have turned out 95% of their voters in presidential years. And in off years, like an odd year election, that turnout is like 22%. It's an amazing difference. It's a really big variable number, which is why it's really important, again, to compare apples to apples, districts, levels, years. You can't compare a presidential cycle race to an off-year race. You can still consider them, but you have to question whether, you know, you're in a presidential year, 2024, right? And if I'm running or Julia's running in 2024, that turnout is going to be distinctly different than a race in 2022 or 2023. So if we use the wrong year, as Julia's campaign manager, I might tell Julia, hey, we only need 23,000 votes to win. But the reality is there's going to be 90,000 people turning out. We just underestimated the vote. And that could be a real big problem. We could be doing all our work and say, hey, Julia, guess what? We ID'd 18,000 people and we're only halfway through our work. I think we're good. But as it turns out, there's another 70,000 people that we didn't account for. So you really have to make sure you're dealing with the right year. Again, I went back 10 years. Then what I started doing is looking at those years. Well, 2013 really wasn't as relevant as 2019 was. So I discounted 2013. Then I looked at 2017 and I was like, okay, 2017, that's a really, you know, good year. Oh, we also had a special election for a state rep, which covers all of my districts. So I also happen to know that that state rep did a lot of, you know, getting out the vote in a really tight election timeline. So that tells me, you know, what you could do in a down year. So, you know, I weighted that a little bit more heavily because those were all my exact precincts. So it's a little bit of an art as much as it is a science here in trying to determine which ones are the right ones. When in doubt, go with the most recent with your exact precincts. Okay, so moving to the next step, how do we estimate the likely future turnout? I'm going to move back one slide here again, right? So this was us saying, what were the registered voters in the previous elections? What was the actual vote in those previous elections? Okay. Now we're saying, how do we estimate the future turnout? So we looked at the actual votes and we got the turnout. So Democrats turned out at 85%, Republicans turned out at 82%, Independents turned out at 23%. Now we're going to move forward thinking that roughly we're going to get 72% turnout across the board in our race. So a couple ways to look at this, and this is why I want to highlight we can't just do averages. It'll give you a quick number, but it's not always accurate. On the left side, we have the 72% average. If you remember a couple slides ago, I said this is our current registration in our current district. Julia has a district of 26,400 people, and it's broken down on the left side. 11-2 Democrats, 9-6, 4-4, 1,200, right? So in the right column here, I just estimated 72% across the board. So 72% times 11,200 gives us 8,064 Democrats, 6,912 Republicans, 4,000 independent and other, for a total likely vote of 19,000. We're expecting 19,000 people to turn out based on the current registration of 26,400 and a likely turnout of 72%. Put that in our pocket for a minute. Benjamin, yes, a recording will be sent out. Victor's asking, is 72% a set value? No, Victor, it's not. If you recall, we looked at actual turnout from a previous election. That was this slide. That gave us the 72%. We calculated that. On the right side of this page, instead of using 72%, I use the actual partisan turnout. So if you remember, we calculated Democrat turnout at 85%, we calculated Republican turnout at 82%, and independents at 23%. So that's what you see here. We did 85% of the same 11.2, that gets us 9571. We did 82% of 9600, that gets us 7872. And we did 23% of all the independent and other, that gets us 1217. It's only a difference of a couple hundred votes, but look at the huge difference between the Democrat and Republican numbers. We have almost, here in the Democrats, it's a difference of 1,500 votes. In the Republicans, it's a difference of almost 1,000 votes. So that's why we want to look at the partisanship scores. We want to look at the actual turnout among Democrats and Republicans, right? Because this is a real thing. If you're in a district where, Republicans know that they're outnumbered, you might have a depressed vote. In an area where Democrats know that they outnumber Republicans, it might be a slightly elevated vote. So you can't just apply one average across the board. You really have to look at it in individual precincts like this. So we have our past, we have our current registration, we have an estimate of what our turnout is going to be within our precincts. Now we can determine the vote numbers, right? We've broken them into that. We want to get our vote numbers, and we can look at a vote deficit, if any, meaning I've looked at my win goal and I'm falling behind, right? Like there are more Republicans than Democrats. I might not be able to win. So let's look at what this might look like here. Again, we talked about 11,200 Democrats at 85% turnout. So you can see the numbers here. We've got a slight advantage. And we're not exactly sure what 1273 means. Are the independents and others going to lean our way? They're going to lean another way. So we're looking at this. I actually have this number, 18,638, is slightly different than what you see here, 18,716. I'll correct that before we get the thing out, just in case you're looking at that saying, hey, it's a different number. But if we were going to do a simple majority, if we're in a state where a simple majority wins, the expected votes are 18,638. We would take 50% of that number and add 1. That tells us that we need 9,320 to win. You could see here, just among the Democrats, we're estimating that we're going to get 9,571 votes. So we're good. 9571 is more than 9320. If we do a really good job of turning out the Democrats, we'll be in great shape there. Now, if some of those Democrats are really conservative and we might not be able to pull them, we might be in a situation where the Republicans have an advantage. We need to figure that out as we start talking to our constituents and talking to voters. Okay. So let's talk about,
right.
Go ahead.
Can we actually, we've got a handful of questions, if you don't mind going back to the previous slide, that I think are worth just calling out. So the first is, somebody is asking, would you do this calculation any differently if you're talking about a closed versus an open primary?
No, not necessarily, because there's no guarantee whether it's closed or open that you're going to have any particular number of candidate, right? Like a closed primary just means that you have to be, it's going to be a partisan primary, right? Like Democrats are going to vote for Democrats, Republicans going to vote for Republicans. So what you would then need to do is, in the primary, you're only going to be looking at Democrats. So if you have a closed primary, you need to, this table doesn't include Republicans, right? You would look at only previous primaries. Like when I said before, compare apples to apples, your apples are just primaries. And then your competitors are potentially going to be other Democrats. So what you would want to do is you would want to look at primaries where multiple people ran, where there's a plurality of voices, right? And then that's your competitor. You'll also have to do a little bit more research into those competitors. You might have to talk to the local Democratic committee. Hey, in 2019, I know there were 2 people. Oh yeah, one of them was really progressive, one of them was really conservative. And then you could look at that and say, well, okay, the conservative person did way better. So, you can break things down like that. Or, you might be in a race where it was two women and a guy, and the women did significantly better than the guy did. So there are other demographics that you could start to consider. If it is a closed primary, you really want to do research with your local Democratic committee. You want to reach out to the party. You want to get on the phone with your county party. You want to get on the phone with some campaign managers. You want to look at your local neighborhood parties and really try to dig in what was happening in that district when that race happened, because that will help you break down within your primary structure.
Great.
Hopefully that helps.
Thank you. Speaking and thinking specifically about likely turnout, do you have any suggestions for how to handle recent changes where places have made, for the good, of course, but have made absentee voting more accessible? So what does that do to these types of models when suddenly the availability of and the ease of voting?
Yeah, your win number is always about total registration. So what you need to do is you need to understand, does the adding mail vote or easier access for absentee vote just in general, or even earlier vote when that timeline gets extended, is that actually raising your voter registration? I would argue not by a lot. Is it easier to vote? Yes. But I don't know that it's raising the registration. Of course, there are going to be outliers. Hey, we added mail vote and registration went up 5%. That happens. But it's not across the board. So what you would want to do, and Julia will show this quickly with VAN, is that VAN tracks all of your absentee votes and your mail votes and lets you know like almost up-to-date information about when those people are voting. You do need to wrap that in when you're doing your organizing, trying to understand who's voting when and how that affects your numbers. So that will come into play.
Yeah, great. Some of these questions, I will, like how to find out for us, how many signed up for absentee ballot. Totally going to get into that. One last question, Craig. If you're working in a district that has only had one primary since redistricting, if the turnout was over 50%, so you're either good voters, but it's in an area that sorry, I'm having a hard time with words. If the top of the ballot is uncontested in the district that you're working in, how does that affect how you do your work, right? So if we're talking about a 2024 isn't a presidential general election year. If the race above you, the governor's race and Biden, are both going to be sort of viewed in your area as like they're going to win, what does that mean for turnout in your area? Great
question. Joe Biden is probably going to turn out more people than you're going to turn out. However, there are a lot of really popular local races. And in some cases, local candidates, like for commission or county, will turn out or get more votes than the governor in that district. It happens, and it happens a lot. I don't think you can assume that, though. I think Julia's right that, a lot of people bullet vote. That means they go into the voting booth, they vote for the top of the ticket, and they take off. They don't even read the bottom of the ballot. So like 1,000 voters in your district may show up and vote, but you only get 50 votes, right? Because a lot of them they plunk for the president, they plunk for the governor, and then boop, they're out of there. They don't care about the local stuff. It's too bad that they do that, but that happens, right? Again, a win number is the vote number that guarantees you win. If you're always looking at top level registration, assuming what your win number is going to be, again, if you're in a majority area, 50% plus one. If you hit that number, you can't lose. The reason it's important is when you develop your win number, you're organizing to hit that win number, right? So if you create metrics based on that win number, I have 1,000 people I need to reach. I have 10 weeks to do it. I need to reach 100 people per week and get confirmations from them they're going to vote for me. If you do that and you believe those confirmations, you hit your win number. So it almost doesn't matter what the turnout's going to be, as long as you're actually organizing, you're hitting the numbers you need to hit. Hopefully that helps.
It does, yeah. Yep, thank you.
I'm just showing a couple slides. I want to show the importance of really going into the district. I'm using Pennsylvania as an example here, But you could see for the most part, Pennsylvania is red, but you've got pockets around Allegheny County, Pittsburgh, and of course blue in Philadelphia. But you can't just assume that that's the only way. Here's Philadelphia, collar areas too. You've got some areas of red here, right? So this is the danger of using an average across a district, because if you're in a local race and you're only looking at a couple districts, you'll notice here there are pockets of red and even deep red in some of these areas. So you can't make an assumption about any precinct, any district. You really have to dig in and understand what the demographics and the voter registration are in your exact precincts. And here's what that looks like. Remember that districts are full of people, right? These are not robots. So I've just broken out 4 districts here. You can see Dems in blue, Republicans in red, Independents and other in gray. So you could see the total registration. Again, here I just used a quick number, like back of the napkin math with that 72%, right? And again, don't do that when you're doing district by district, but this is just quick, put it into a table, look at the numbers. And then again, across the board, hey, if 72% of Democrats turn out, what does that look like? And then somebody asked before about cushioning, right? Technically 50% plus 1 wins, but here I said, hey, I want to have a little bit of cushion, so I'm going to assume 53%. If I want to get 53% of the vote, I need 286 Democrats to turn out. I'm only going to get 252 at 72% turnout. That means I need to persuade 34 more voters in that district. When I do that analysis across all of my 10, 20, 200 districts, I will get a final number. In this case, it's telling me I'm 57 votes short. I need to convince 57 people of another party to vote for me. So when you look at this on a precinct by precinct basis, you might determine that you are in fact short in your race. Cool. So I'll give a real quick story here. A lot of this is manual, looking at voter data, looking at precincts, historical election data, things like that. I have a background in engineering. I had an engineering class where we were doing surveying, looking at buildings and surveying items. And we had a really professor who was like really old school. We had these transits. We had to mark things in a book. We literally used slide rules to do calculations. Like I hadn't even seen a slide rule before this thing. Like my dad didn't even use slide rules. Like he wouldn't let us use calculators. We had to use slide rules in case we were on site and needed to know the calculations. So all year we did that, working on these little notebooks and doing calculations in our head. And on the last day of class before we graduated, he broke out a laser guided transit where all we needed to do was press one button and it did all the calculations for us. And he's like, hey, when you go out there and you get jobs, you're going to be using this kind of, laser thing. But we knew how to do those calculations. So I give you all this because it's important that you know how to do the calculations and how to think about your district. What we're going to do is translate or transition into what Julie is going to do, because what Julie is going to show you is how to use VAN, which is the cool laser guided voter file that takes all of this work that I've just shown you and puts it into maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes worth of work. Julia, what do you think?
Yeah, I think, and we'll show you all the ways to automate it too. So
cool.
Do you want to talk folks through this slide,
Yeah.
Craig?
So the Voter Activation Network, otherwise known as the VAN, is something that you'll probably get access to as a Democratic candidate through your local committee, through the state committee, or through the DNC. Somewhere along those lines, you'll probably get access to it. If you are a campaign now, you don't have access to it, start asking for it because you want to get early access as you can. It is by far the best and most frequently updated 50-state voter file across the board. Actually, we have more than 50 states in there, don't we?
51.
51. So it can perform the entire analysis that I've described for the last 40 minutes with a couple clicks. It's going to save you hours of research and planning time. It's got decades of voter history in there, literally for every registered voter. As soon as a new registered voter comes online, the states give us that information. Boom, it goes into the software. It can break down precincts by scores, models, turnout models. What's the likelihood of this Democrat turning out? What's the likelihood of this district turning out? Does this person lean Democrat? Do they lean Republican? Are there other scores in there? Do they care about the environment? Are they a likely gun owner? Things like that. All of those things are going to be included in there and does a lot of the math for you and is extremely accurate, extremely accurate. Not only that, but you can create call lists, walk lists, mailing lists. You can map it. You can route those maps. You could send it to Minivan, which is a mobile application, and you could do all of your mobile canvassing on it. You can share it again with Minivan, which is the leading mobile canvassing app. You can do work with your team and sync things up in real time. It's just a really great tool that does a lot of the work for you. So I think what Julia is going to show is creating and running a list so you can search for your district, right? So when you get access to the van through your neighborhood committee or at a higher level through the state party, they're going to give you access just to your district. So if you're a commissioner or if you're a governor, you're going to pull up the list and then boom, it's just going to be there in van for you, all your voters. You can break them down by precincts. You could look at all the different precincts through your access, your committee in van. And then with a couple clicks, you could break them down by registered parties. You could even press a couple check boxes and say, show me the 2018 race. Show me the 2019 race just in my district. And it's going to give you those numbers broken down by district, by precinct, by party, and all the other things that you're looking for. And it does it all for you automatically. Then it's going to estimate for you what your turnout is going to be. So again, it takes all this math that you would do, and I would argue you still want to do it maybe a little bit manually, or at least think about it, but Van's going to do it all for you. So I'll stop here and let you take over, Julia.
Yeah, Craig, I think you need to stop sharing your screen. Thank you. All right, I know folks want to get back quickly to Craig's very super interesting conversation. So I'm gonna jump in, and just a couple of people have asked a really fair question, which is, when you're talking about Van, are you talking about Votebuilder? What are you talking about? So in this case, what we're talking about is the variety of different tools that we think of as My Voters. And the two primary ones that Craig has been noting is going to be the Votebuilder through the DNC, which, as he said, is going to be your primary source for access to the tools. Additionally, we have another offering called SmartVAN. They both look and feel the same way. Someone asked a question about frequency of updates. It depends on the state, and it depends on the system that we're talking about. Generally, it is as often as an update is made available and is significant enough to be processed. Our data team will do that. That's the case for sort of core voter file updates throughout the year. At a minimum, it will be done 4 times. Most states, it's somewhere in the 8 to 10 range. The other thing that I think is really worth noting about all of the VAN systems is that as we move through and closer to the elections themselves, we update for you early vote data, both for the primary and the general, so that you can do that really smart targeting that Craig talked about. We also update and make available polling location data, early vote location data, or, because we know some states have it, voting convenience centers. So the different data points that you need to be able to see who voted, or to be able to provide the necessary information to people that you're talking to on the doors. Hey, Craig, it looks like you haven't returned your ballot. Do you know that your voting convenience center is this school in your neighborhood? All right, so I'm going to jump in to create a list, which is the place that all good things start in Van. And I'm going to go back in. So when it comes to create a list, a lot of the stuff that Craig was talking about, you're going to start by thinking about your districts. And so Craig talked a lot about precinct. Maybe it's a particular county. Perhaps you're running for state house or state senate. So let's say we want to start by pulling counts for everyone in these 4 state senate, or maybe let's just say we're going to start with State Senate District 22. I can hit preview my results, and automatically I see that there are 37,000 people who are active registered voters in this district. If I wanted to further narrow by county, I could do that. And then from there, you'll be able to pull up things like precinct or city. The next thing that, as Craig was talking about, that I was nodding along, that we make really easy for you is the voting history. So for the voting history, you have the ability to choose between any, all, at least, exactly, or no more than. And that nuance is really important and will matter depending on where you are in calculating your win number. But as you see, you have per state, it will vary because some states have special, some states bucket all the primaries together. But we do go back to the early 2000s and show general, primary, municipal, special primaries. So if you wanted to see who is everybody in my list, who has voted in the 3 most recent primaries, you can easily do that. And then you hit preview my results and you'll see that there's nobody. That was a quick one number to calculate. So the nice thing about create a list in the vote history section is that the system moves very quickly, which is a great time saver. The next thing I want to talk about, which I think is one of the more powerful parts of both the Votebuilder and the SmartVAN system, is our scores system. So scores is how you calculate and see how many people are in my district that fall into this turnout model. And you'll see that we have different types of turnouts for general, primary, special, off year, because like Craig said, those distinctions all matter. We also have partisanship scores. So I saw somebody said, what if in my district we have a lot of people who are registered to vote, say they're Republicans that aren't voting or falling in this direction. The scores is another great way to layer that data and see, okay, they say that they're registered as a Republican, or maybe we don't have their registration, their party registration status, but we can see that they do these things. And that can also help you to build a more robust and clear universe. Somebody had asked about redistricting, and I just want to call out that most of our systems, you'll notice that when you're in the district section, that we still have the district information from the previous districting. And I believe that most places are going to leave that in place through the election, because it is helpful to see how people performed, where they live based on the previous sort of districting plans. All right, Craig, I'm going to hand this back over to you to wrap up because we've got just a couple of minutes left. Oh, Craig, you're on mute.
Thanks. Zoom, let me share my screen again, and we'll go back to the presentation if I could find it. Oh, there it is. Okay, can everyone see that again? We good? Perfect, thank you. Okay, so what does this all mean, right? You've got your numbers. This is where you make a go, no-go decision, right? Like, does turning out your base generate enough votes for you to win? In the example we had, it does, right? 9,500 versus, I think it was 8,200. So really, we focus on turning out our base. What's the expected cost to touch all those voters, right? You could use general marketing principles. We have to touch them 7 times before we get them to react. You don't know if it's going to be the first time or the 7th before they vote, right? So you want to make sure you're hitting them. Are they responsive to mail? Are you doing digital ads? Are you doing all of them? Are you doing phone calling through VAN? Stuff like that. This is where you want to talk to a campaign manager and estimate what's it going to cost. How much does it cost me to mail 5,000 voters? How much does it cost me to call 5,000 voters? How much is it going to cost me to hire an organizing staff member to help me do that and to recruit volunteers? Can I raise that much money, right? It's going to cost 50,000. Can I raise that? I'm in a school board race. That's tough. If you're in a school board race in California, you might raise $1 million. So these are questions that you understand your win goal, your win number, and you move to the next step to calculate your strategy on top of that. Is the number of potential voters you need to persuade? Someone was talking about, Republicans or Democrats in my district are really conservative. Do you need to persuade them? That's harder, right? It's harder and takes longer to persuade somebody than it does to just ID them if you know they're a Democrat. Sometimes you make a call, hey, this is Craig. I'm a volunteer with Julia's campaign. And the person on the line go, is Julia a Republican or Democrat? I go, oh, she's a Democrat. They go, no problem. I'm good. Thanks for telling me the name. Julia's got my vote. Other people might keep you on the phone for 10 minutes trying to persuade them. You need to calculate that in how long and how much money it will cost to do your campaign. And then how much time do you have, right? You have a special election. You need to convince 50,000 people and you only have 3 weeks to do it. Maybe 50,000 people aren't going to turn out because it is a special election and no one's going to hear about the race. So these are the things that you need to think about. And then again, you talk about primary considerations. There could be 6 candidates on the ballot. We did a governor's race down in Florida a couple of years ago, and there were 6 people on the ballot, and we were looking at win numbers going like, I don't know, it's a little bit tough. I mean, if we get, 1 million votes, we're good, but there's like 6 candidates. We're looking at different issues and things like that. I mean, it's a little bit of, a shot in the dark, and you just have to identify your number and do the best you can to get as many IDs as you can in those situations. So I think we've got a few more. I mean, that's pretty much what we have to present. Again, we'll get this out to you in a form that you could all use. I know we're all a minute or two over, but we'll take a couple more questions here real quick. Again, I want to be sensitive to people's times. If you want to go, we'll record this for 1 or 2 minutes. If people want to stay on, we'll answer some more questions, and then I'll start answering some of these ones that we have left open. Please show us these maps for the US. That's from Vivian. Vivian, in the deck, you will see links for those maps, and you can connect to the source. So you'll see that. Is there a resource for best practices with minivan? In fact, there is, anonymous attendee. We have something called the Mini Vanual, and it's on our website. If you go to ngpvan.com, you will find the Mini Vanual, and it's like, I don't know, 100 and something pages of how to use minivan. It's fantastic. You can also log into our support system and get self-directed help there as well. Cool. Mark asks, how often does underlying voter data get updated during a campaign? Great question, Mark. During every year, the election departments do that. Some election departments are better than others. In a big area, they have more staff, they do it quicker. Generally speaking, it's pretty frequent. You can expect that your voter data is going to get updated from the Secretary of State or the county elections people, many times during the course of a year. Whether they report that, up is different for different states. There's actually, in the law, the code of each state, there's actually things written about how the elections bureaus have to work and how often and how frequently they have to get data to the Secretary of State. That's actually written into law, believe it or not, in many states. As soon as the Secretary of State updates that data, we're pulling it. So if the Secretary of State updates it for their state, we're getting that data, very, very quickly. In the case of mail data, Julia, correct me if I'm wrong here, but like when we get into elections and people are registering by mail and voting by mail, like it could be multiple times a day that the party updates that stuff, that the county updates it, the state updates it, and we do it as soon as they do it. It used to be that you'd have to download lists, you have to pick up certain things. That was years ago. It's different now. Everything's digital, everything's online. We get that information very quickly, and it goes into our system very quickly. My municipal election is March 2024. Anonymous attendee, good luck to you. You only have a couple months. Get rolling. Get access to Van. Start making those calculations. Talk to your local neighborhood party. If you're in, East so-and-so Tennessee, talk to your neighborhood party. If you're not sure who they are, call the Tennessee Dems. If you're in Kentucky, call the Kentucky Dems. If you're in Pennsylvania, call the Pennsylvania Dems. I guarantee you they're online. Give them a buzz. They will tell you how you get access. If you're in an area where you, for some reason, can't get access through the state party, then you can call us. But the state parties are everywhere. They're in all the states. Give them a buzz. Votes are private. What sources are used to inform voter history metrics? Yeah, so you may, you're not going to know exactly who voted. Like, you won't be able to tell that Craig Grella voted for Julia, but you will be able to tell overall how many people voted for Julia. They list the votes for the candidates. So you won't know that. You'll know that 9,000 people voted for Julia. You won't know exactly who those 9,000 people are, right? So what you're doing is working with top line numbers and using those top line numbers compared to your existing registration to estimate top line numbers in your district. You then have to do outreach, phone calls, emails, mail, to identify who those voters are and get vote commitments from them. Hopefully that makes sense, Jessica. Jason asks, if I look at one particular year, let's say 2020 general, the tools in NGP-VAN do not match the numbers on my county site for turnout. Okay. Is that because some of those voted in 2020 may not be registered or have moved? Do you want to answer that, Julia? Jason's question.
It's sort of hard to answer without knowing how you're looking at it, but it could be a variety of things, like people have moved, or what the definition of what you're looking at doesn't line up exactly. I would suggest, if you have access, putting in a support request and asking for help clarifying that. Oftentimes it is something as simple as what's on the website doesn't account for movers, or people who have perhaps switch party affiliations or anything like that, versus what's in VAN does reflect that.
And there are some areas where the data may not have been updated, and the data admin is maybe working on that. Typically, they'll publish when they're doing updates. But like Julia said, get in touch using support inside VAN. That will go to the state party and they'll clarify that for you. Jessica, in states and races that don't require party registration, that information will still be listed in VAN. Whether those people voted or not and the total votes, that information will still be listed there. So you'll be able to pull down a total number. You won't have the partisanship to roll on, in which case you still need to go with the top number anyway, Jessica. So that's going to be the important information for you. And you'll have it broken down by district because their location will be recorded where they vote. Victor, thank you. Appreciate it. Ruth asks, Ruth joins a lot of our webinars. Thanks, Ruth. I don't know if you're still on or not, but yeah, more info on ranked choice. I'll get you some of those links, Ruth. I'll get that sent out to you in the email. Thank you again. Harry asks, Georgia has 20 plus choices for scores, which are most important. Personally, and Julia, Ruth, hey, Julia, you may be able to assist here. Different states will be interested in different packages, right? Like, so some states may have certain scores and other states may have different scores. I don't know that that's consistent across the board, but so which scores are most important? I love to look at turnout score. That's looking at a lot of different demographics, vote history. It's using a certain algorithm which changes every year on how to determine the likelihood of that person voting. I like looking at the turnout score because it saves a lot of work for me. And in my experience, it is very accurate. I also look at partisanship scores. Those are the ones that I like to look at. It helps me determine, like, if I run my numbers and those numbers show that there's going to be 8,000 Democrats likely to turn out, and then I look at a partisanship score and I filter for Democrats and it shows me like 8,100, those two numbers are tight. That tells me I'm probably on the right track. If I do my calculations and my calculations say it's likely that I'm going to get 10,000 Democrats and VAN tells me I'm only going to get 3,000 Democrats, I might start redoing my math. Like, something's off there. That's a big difference. Hopefully that helps, Harry. What do these ranges mean in the score section? Larry, can you put some more context in your question?
I understand what he's asking. So
okay.
It depends on the score and it depends on the system. If you are using Votebuilder to piggyback on a question Craig gave earlier, I would suggest contacting your admin. They'll be able to tell you. If you're using SmartVAN, I would do the same thing. There might also be information in the help docs, but essentially it is each score has different percentiles and different ranges that, depending on what the score is in reference to, a 0 to 20 might mean low on some things. It might refer to a particular type of ranking on others. Traditionally, they're 0 to 10 or 0 to 100.
Thank you, Julia. Lucille asks, primary starts February 15th, or primary voting, early voting. Lucille, you're not going to like this answer, but get off the webinar and start calling voters. Just get out there and do more work than your competitors. If your competitors are out there 3 hours a day, you need to be out there 4 hours a day. I wish I had a better answer for you, but that's, you have to work. Start talking to voters because you only have a couple weeks. Let's see. 2 counties. Dennis, your state house district maps 2 counties. If you're using VAN, you'll get access to both of those counties. So in VAN, it's going to be real easy. You're going to see the total vote regardless of the county. You can then break it down by county. I did a race a couple of years ago where we had a blue county and a red county, and the state senator was in both. And, quite different votes across those 2 places. So it was really tough. We did a manual calculation and we validated that with VAN. And we won that race by 69 votes. I think people who've been on my webinars before heard about that race, but VAN makes that super easy for you. Super easy because it's going to do all those calculations automatically, regardless of county. But if you are doing it manually, you got to get both county files and you have to break down just the districts that you're in and put them in a total table. If you email me, when I email you, reply to that email. I might even have a spreadsheet that I used for that race, which shows the combination of those 2 counties and how we tackled that. And then you can compare that to VAN as well. We're about 15 minutes past. All right. So we should probably wrap it up here. If you'd like, actually, we have about 70 people left. I think I have a quick poll. So, we don't like spamming people. I'm going to drop this one real quick. For those who are still around, I'm just going to launch this poll here. Can I launch this? Let's see. Do you all see a poll up or no? No, I might. How do I? Oh, there might still be the other poll. Stop sharing. Was that poll up on the thing the whole time? That's probably annoying. So if you'd like a demo of how NGP VAN or even just VAN can be used on your specific campaign, drop a yes. Like, we don't want to spam people and just, randomly ask the 500 people that registered here. Drop a note right there and we'll have someone contact you directly over email or phone, but they'll give you a demo customized to your campaign and how it might be used for your specific campaign or your specific needs. So Victor, you've got NGP already. Great. Thank you for that comment. That's very nice. Karen, thank you. Just pop your thing in there. We'll have your name from the poll and we'll reach out separately. Also, if you want, just go to this web address, ngpvan.com/get elected, put your information in, and that tells us that you want a demo directly. We don't want to bug everyone who, joined the webinar. That's not what this is for. So, put your information there and we'll reach out. Cool. We have a couple unanswered questions. There's about 10 unanswered questions. I'm sorry we couldn't get to them all. I will commit to getting you answers to all those unanswered questions. So if there are questions here we did not answer, we will make sure to get them. Hey, Marty Marks, how are you doing? Marty, I think I might have your email address, so I'll send you a note. But either way, you're going to get one from me in the next. I'll drop it in the chat real quick too. There. I dropped it in the chat. You can send me a note. When we send out an email to everyone and get the response here, you can reply to that and I'll make sure to get you some stuff there too. Cool. So thank you everybody for joining us. This is a great webinar. Really appreciate your participation. This was very engaging. We will reach out to you. Give us, a day, maybe 2 days. Worst case scenario, everyone will have this, probably by Monday. And any questions you have, give us a shout. We'll be around. Thank you, Julia. Thank you very much. Thank you. Usma was on answering questions again. Thank you, Usma. And we'll see you all again soon. Take care, everyone. Have a great weekend.